What is up, my friends and fellow busy bees? If you are caught up on the latest podcast episodes, then you know that I've recently returned to a 9 to 5 job after having been previously self-employed full-time for about 2 years, which means that I am now at a different stage in the Furniture Refinishers success spectrum, and I am back to being a side hustler. If you don't know what the Furniture Refinishers success spectrum is, I will be sure to leave a link to the episode where I deep dive into it. But essentially, there's a spectrum of where you could fall in your furniture refinishing journey. We have the lurker, we have the dabbler and hobbyist, we have the side hustler, and we have the all-inner. And I am back in my side hustler era. And because I know that this is where the large majority of you sit, I wanted to do an episode just talking about my transition back into this, how it's been going, the struggles that I found, how I've been able to, and how I intend to continue to integrate the work into my day-to-day, and any sort of strategies that I've had for successfully doing so. Because there was a lot of time when I was a side hustler. I started doing this as an unofficial business in late 2020, and it wasn't until the summer of 2022 that I decided to quit my job to do this full time. So in that time period, there was a lot of learning how to do the actual furniture refinishing. There was a lot of time learning how to start a business and how to build a business and figuring all of that stuff out. And then eventually it got really busy, so I had to get really strategic with balancing it all out with my other duties and requirements. And I totally get that if you have other things going on in your life that I don't, then it will be an added layer of intentionality that you're going to have to integrate into your approach to this. For example, if you have children or if you care for other people in your life, maybe you have elderly parents, maybe you have family members that you help take care of. Those are obviously really time-consuming, and not only just time, but also energy and mental capacity consuming things that are going to take precedence over putting some paint on a piece of furniture. I totally get that. I just want to share what's worked best for me, and although not on that level by any means, but I do now have a dog, which I didn't have previously when I was doing this as a side hustler. So that is an added element of balance that I've had to try and work in and figure out how it's going to balance best with my day, because I'm also working from home in this new role. So I have a dog that's around all day, so he needs to be tired by the time I start my work day. So I guess I'll just walk you through what a typical work day has been for me since I have started this role. I'm only a couple weeks in, so I'm definitely trying to figure out what works best and where to situate what and what things need to be moved around and kind of how that's all working. But as it stands currently, I aim to wake up between 5:45 and 6 a.m. I get up, and from 6 till 7 is my start the day time. So I feed the dog, I make a coffee, drink a coffee, do my reading. I'll get caught up on any emails that I haven't been able to address either personally or for the business. I will do any social media stuff that I need to do, if I need to plan a post, if I need to reply to DMs, if I need to sometimes do some mindless scrolling. I try to not do that in the mornings especially, but every now and then I'll go on to reply to comments and then I'll get sucked in. It happens to the best of us. But from 6 until just about 7 is when I try and get all those things off my plate. Also, if I didn't have a chance to clean up the kitchen the night before, if the dishwasher's filled, I'll get all of that done, ideally during that hour. So that has allowed me to maintain just a slow start to my day. That was something that had changed because I used to sleep until the last minute and then get up and just start work when I was working previously. And that doesn't feel great. You don't feel like you have any agency over your day, or I didn't feel that way at least. And then everything just felt like it was so rushed. And then after work, I had all this stuff that I needed to get done. So this way I'm able to wake my mind up. I feel like I have a choice in kind of what I do to start my day. Currently, I am using an alarm to wake up, but in an ideal world, I will eventually train my body to wake up at that time every day. And if I find that I go to bed at a relatively similar time every night and my body naturally is waking me up around my alarm, I might cut the alarm, because that's one of the things I hate most about having plans for the day is having to wake up to an alarm. It just like starts your day stressed. I don't like it. I've seen those other alarm clocks where it's like the Hatch one where it just gets brighter gradually, but I could sleep anywhere at any time, so I don't know if that would necessarily wake me up, but we're going to see what works best. And another thing that I do, because stretching is very important, especially if you're doing furniture refinishing, you're going to find that your back, your neck, your legs, a lot of things are going to start to ache in different ways. Partially from lifting the furniture and things like that, but more so from just doing the work. I find I tend to hunch and I'm like bent over, and all those things can really add up over time. So first thing in the morning when I turn off my alarm, I try and put my feet on the ground so that I won't then turn over and go back to sleep. And then I just do like a full body stretch before even getting up. And that has been really nice because then I know that I'm getting my stretching in and that my body is at a decent spot when I'm starting my day. So that's a good tip if anyone has found it hard to integrate stretching into your day. I know for me, I don't think about it once I'm like in the middle of my day, but I know that I feel better after I do it. So if I do that first thing in the morning, it's perfect. So at 7 o'clock, I get my shoes on, I get the dog, and we go for a walk. From 7 till 8 is our walk time. Sometimes if I sleep in a little bit later, that might flex a little bit. It might only be like a 45-minute walk. But in a perfect world, we're going for about an hour walk. It's a great way for me to wake up, get some fresh air, see the sun, set my circadian rhythm, tire the dog out. And again, it feels like that's time of my own. I have switched to no longer listening to podcasts and audiobooks while I'm on the dog walks because although it was a really great time for me to be able to consume the content that I wanted to, or to, work through my podcast to-do list. I always have so many that I'm following that now when I'm not able to be listening all day, every day, I feel like I'm always playing catch up. But when I switched to not listening to that stuff on the walks, I found that that was a great time actually for my mind to just wander, and things that when I'm in the hustle and bustle of the day that wouldn't necessarily be able to push through my subconscious, I'm able to remember things or just think through things. It's good reflection time. And I also found I was being super antisocial and getting annoyed when people would want to talk to me or meet the dog or whatever. And I realized I need to set my expectations a little bit better. Call back to last week's episode. If you haven't listened, go and listen. But I was like, you know what? I'm expecting that I'm going to be able to work through this podcast or audiobook. And then obviously Yukon's going to want to talk to every dog, or sniff, play with whatever, every dog that goes by. I'm not going to just ignore the owner who's trying to have early morning small talk with me. And I'm annoyed if I have to pull my phone out and press pause on my thing that I'm trying to get through and take out my sound blocking earphone. So I was like, you know what? Little simple fix. I'm just not going to listen to stuff on that walk. And I also realized that I had no points in my day when I wasn't really consuming anything or having anything in my ears. And I feel like it's nice to let your brain wander and do what it needs to do. So that has been a great transition. Then at 8 o'clock, I start my work day. I work through until 4 o'clock. And at 4 o'clock, I go straight to the garage, unless we have something scheduled for the day. I try and let from 4 till about 6:30 be my time in the garage where I get things done. Around 6:30, come in, start to make dinner till about 7:30, maybe 8 if we're watching something, and then I try and get a workout in, do anything around the house that needs to get done, have a shower, and then go up to bed and start getting ready for bed. Ideally, sleeping around 10:30-ish. So that's an average day. Obviously, it changes depending on if other things need to happen, grocery shopping, we have plans with friends, etc. But for me, and putting together this routine and reflecting on how it's going to fit best in my life, the things that I found really useful to think about are, what are the things that I really want to prioritize? For me, that's been my health and wellness is something that I do not want to let slip, especially because I'm working from home and at a computer now. Inevitably, I'm just not going to be getting as much movement and as many steps in my day compared to when I was in the workshop all day and running around and doing errands and stuff. There's a lot more movement in my day, so I want to ensure that I am continuing to move my body, working out, eating right. I know that stuff makes me feel good. I've seen positive results from it, so that's something that I do not want to let slip. And I need to prioritize for him and for me and being able to enjoy my workday, walking the dog. I still have responsibilities at the house, and that can fluctuate as it needs to. That's something that can be more of a potential to push or to have a conversation with my husband of him taking some of the tasks on and things like that. Maybe he cooks more in the evening, that kind of thing. But the big non-negotiable is that I want to continue to have a clean, tidy, organized home because that will help me to have a clean, tidy, organized mind, and also the health and wellness aspect of it. But having an idea of what are your non-negotiables and which things do you have the potential to push? Are there some things that you feel like you really want to get done today, but realistically the world won't end if you push them to tomorrow? I feel like those are good things to have a running list of that you could fit in if you had time in your day, but if things take a little bit longer than anticipated, that's something that could move till tomorrow when you're trying to juggle all the things that you want to get done. And when I go into the garage and I know that that is my time in the workshop to get things done, I have 2.5 hours. The big thing that's going to help me out is being organized and being efficient with that time. So that means that I need to have a space that is clean, it's tidy, it's organized, I know where everything is located, and it also means that at the end of that session, I need to be putting things away and taking a few minutes to make sure that things are in order so that when I go into the workshop next time, I know what needs to get done, I know where to find the things that I need, and I can just hit the ground running so I'm not spending a bunch of time running around looking for a little tiny tool that rolled under something yesterday when I was using it and I forgot about it, or something else that's just going to have me wasting time. I also like to take the products that I'm going to be working on with the pieces that I'm working on and leaving those near the front door. I don't tend to leave them in the garage. It's not as big of a deal right now when it's warm out, but especially in the winter, I can't leave stain and paint and things like that out there because they will freeze. So I've just gotten into the habit of leaving it near the front door, near the door to the garage. And so not only is that handy for me to just grab when I'm going into the workshop, but for me it's also a visual reminder of the things that I need to get done, and I can start to work through those in my brain a bit and how am I going to hit the ground running when I get into the garage when I'm walking around the house on my lunch break, for example. And so when I do get in the garage and I'm trying to utilize that time best, I also need to make sure that I'm sequencing the activities that I need to get done in a way that makes most sense. Because usually I'm working on a few pieces at a time. Right now I have a big hutch that I'm working on for a custom. I have another custom client who has brought me 4 little pieces that I'm sanding down. I also have a little kind of TV stand buffet situation that I'm finishing up, and a sideboard from my in-laws that I'm working on as the time allows. So that's 4 different projects, one of which I'm at the point of adding a top coat to, one of which I'm painting, one of which I'm sanding, and one of which I'm still in the process of taking apart and kind of scraping the old finish off. So that means that I need to be really intentional when I go out and I'm utilizing that time out there of what makes sense to do first, second, and third. Because if I go out there and I just want to get the top coating off of my plate, I'm going to go out there, I'm going to top coat, and then I'm going to look at the other things that I have to get done. And maybe I can paint. Okay, that's good. Get the paint done. But then I have wet top coat and wet paint sitting there when I need to do some sanding. And so I can't sand unless I move that piece out of the workshop or somewhere else, but it has wet paint now, so I'm not gonna do that. So I've kind of put myself at a standstill, and I can tidy the space and clean and organize and do that kind of stuff, but that's not really at that point in my work session an efficient thing to be doing. So instead, the first thing I do when I go out there is I'm going to sand things down. And if I need a break from sanding, I'll go over to the scraping and the cleaning of the piece or disassembling. And then I might go back to a bit more sanding. And then either once my batteries are completely dead on the sander or I feel like I've got enough accomplished for that session, then I'm going to go through, I'm going to clean up any sanding dust, and I'm going to move on to the painting and then the top coating. And then once that's done, that's all I need to get done in that session. So I can let those sit. I know I'm not going to get any fluffies and sanding dust and stuff into the drying finishes. I go inside, I'm done, I can move on with my day. So being really intentional with what you do when will ensure that you're making the most of that time and you're not denying yourself the ability to get done what you need to get done. I also find that doing any sort of the sourcing and talking to clients and stuff first thing in the morning in that 6 to 7 a.m. period is great, because then I have an idea of where we're at. If I was waiting for a follow-up from a client on what to do with their piece, in theory, I now know what direction I can go when I step out there in the afternoon. I've ordered any pieces. If I need to source hardware, for example, that's on its way. So there's no things outstanding by that point. So I should have a good idea by the end of the day and the end of that work session, what's been accomplished and what's next and what's left for tomorrow. Although I don't have 8 hours available in my day to do the things, I'm still getting roughly the same amount of things done because it's in a consolidated period, and I'm just being much more intentional and organized about the way that I do it. Would it have been good to do this previously? Absolutely it would have, but sometimes we need to learn things the hard way. And some things that I found useful in terms of offering custom work, this was previously and also now that I'm reminding myself of, is that probably I'll end up pulling back from customs in the amount that I had been doing them previously. I was working on multiple customs at a time, provided that I had the space, and depending on how complex the project was and again how much of my space it would take up. But I have a few that are currently lined up that I will stick to and I'll get completed. But after that, I think I'm going to take a beat and just work on pieces for myself and in my own time, because that's going to allow me to figure out what works best, how quick am I able to flip these pieces and get them out, and then that will give me a good idea for timelines that I can offer clients when they're reaching out to me. Now, if there's some projects that someone reaches out and it just seems like it would be a really fun thing to work on or pretty straightforward, I'll probably still take those on. But I've gotten some recently that I have taken that probably wouldn't have been my first choice, but just simply to keep my slots filled and to keep things moving, I took them on. And, you live and you learn. It is what it is. But when I do take on those projects, even if they're ones that I'll really enjoy, I'll be really intentional with the way that I frame those. One thing that I have learned over the years, if you are not asked for a timeline for completion, don't necessarily offer one. If people are asking, of course, you can tell them, but also be upfront with the amount of time that you have available. For example, when I took these customs on that I'm currently working on, I let them know that I'm going back to work. I'll just be doing this part-time now, so it might take a little bit longer than my completion would have been previously. And as long as they are aware of that and they know what to expect and they say they're cool with it, then that's great. And then I don't feel the pressure as well to be adhering to a certain date if, a night comes up when we want to go and hang out with friends. So I don't necessarily get that period from 4 to 6:30 to work in the garage that night. I feel better about not doing that versus having to make it up by waking up at 4 a.m. the next day so that I can get those 2 hours in another point of my day. You know what I mean? So letting people know your availability and just not setting deadlines if it's not required of you or asked of you. And if they do ask for a certain deadline, add a few weeks to what you think it will be. Just because you never know, and if they're fine with that date, then that works great. Some people just want to have an idea so that they can plan accordingly, which totally makes sense. But don't make yourself stressed out as a result of it. And I think the thing that has been most helpful for me to remember as I have gone into this side hustle mode again is that I'm the one that is creating any sort of expectation that exists, other than the fact that I'm currently working on a couple people's pieces. Any sort of productivity that I have or I don't have, any sort of movement of pieces or completion of pieces, anything that I think needs to be done right now is truly just me creating that expectation of myself based on my previous outputs, based on my expectation of what I know I can do. However, that can change at any time, and it is only myself that I have to, I was going to say to blame for it, but I'm the only person that I have to consult about that. I'm the one that's in charge. It's my business. It can be whatever I want it to be, and it's a good thing to remind myself of because it has been moving in such a consistent forward motion for the last couple of years, and I've been whipping out pieces, but that doesn't mean that now that has to keep up necessarily. It could, and if I'm able to balance it and I feel good about it, then that's great. But if it doesn't, then I don't want to either A, have other non-negotiables in my life slip as a result, or B, end up resenting this thing because it's taking up any of my free time that's now a little bit more scarce than it used to be. And ultimately, because my intention is to do this long term, I definitely don't want either of those things to happen. So just being really aware, checking in with myself, and if I'm ever feeling stressed or anxious about something, just being like, why am I thinking this way? What expectation am I having right now? And is there a way to change that? Or is it even founded? Like, is there even any expectation there? Or am I just creating that story in my head that somebody expects this of me, or I need to uphold this because it was what I was doing before? It's so easy to get built up in our heads and feel like this is so important. It's not important. It's my business. Yes, it's my baby. I love it. I cherish it. But at the end of the day, it's only that important to me. And so it's kind of humbling to be able to remind myself of that. And it takes away a lot of stress or the heaviness that can have the tendency to come up when life gets stressful. And something you may not know about me, I love little motivational messages. They always get me fired up, and I keep a running list of ones that are especially catchy or speak to me in the Notes app on my phone. So I end every podcast episode with one that I've noted down over the years in the hopes that you leave our time here each week feeling inspired, motivated, and ready to take on whatever comes your way this week. This week's Smells motivational message comes from Alan Watts, and it is: you are under no obligation to be the person you were 5 minutes ago. Isn't that freeing? Isn't that such a great little thing to keep in the back of your mind at any given time in your life? I'm under no obligation to be a furniture refinisher. I'm under no obligation to be a side hustler. I'm under no obligation to have the sense of humor I had 10 minutes ago. I'm under no obligation to have the outlook on life I had 5 minutes ago. I'm under no obligation to continue any bad habits that I have. I'm under no obligation to keep the people in my life that are in my life. All of these things, I'm not obligated to do it. I can choose to do it. It's ideal if I'm intentionally choosing to do them. But if it's not working for me or it's not serving me anymore, I'm under no obligation to be that person again. I can choose in this next minute to be whoever, whatever, within the confines of like other implications. There's financial and ethical and other considerations, but you can be whoever the fuck you want to be, so don't let that be something that holds you back. If there is something you want to do, if there's something you want to try, if there's a way you would like to be, try it. If someone says something about it, fuck them. That's fine. Maybe they don't want to change. Maybe they find change scary, and so they see that in other people and they make a comment about it. But you can be whoever you want. You can do whatever you want. I heard somebody recently say that they are just a compilation of every cool girl that they've ever seen in their life. And 1000% that resonated. I was like, if I look in the mirror sometimes, I'm like, who is that person? Because the little girl in the bush that grew up as an only child, isolated on the res, she seems like a whole other person, but in a great way. Like, I feel like I'm a different evolution. I'm on a different level, but I've picked and chosen different things along the way that I've thought would help me, that I thought would work well for me, that resonated with me, that I thought were cool, that I thought were aspirational, that I thought were motivational. And I have created the quilt of what is now me in terms of my character, in terms of my values, in terms of my sense of humor, in terms of my looks, in terms of my physicality, in terms of how I interact with people, all of these things. And sometimes it truly is just being a different person than who you were 5 minutes ago and being okay with that. And if it works, it works. And if it doesn't, you leave it. So remember that you are under no obligation to be the person you were 5 minutes ago. Think about it. All right, that's it for now. I appreciate your time, and I will catch you guys next week.